Okay, so this is going to be a quick tutorial on how to bring things into After Effects. You can use pretty much whatever you want, but this is going to kind of show you how to use layering, and it's also going to show you a little bit about how to get 3D elements in your 2D animation piece for free. So let me go ahead and start with the scene that I have is basically a simple background. I'll go into Photoshop here. This is just a simple wash that I've done real quick. I have two images. I have this, and I have some really cheap generic rain that I've created, and it's just basically a layer, transparent layer with a bunch of streaks on it. The thing that you want to note here is that my background is 640 by 480. That's the aspect ratio of it. My rain has to be a little bit taller than that. So basically, the width is 640, but the height is 3 times that amount of 480. So it'd be 480 times 3, and that's my height. And I do this because this is actually going to be scrolling down. You're actually probably going to want something a little bit taller than this, but for purposes of showing you this demo, I'm just making it this tall. And this is just for like rain, and this is very generic, cheapo rain. It's not the best quality, but it definitely demonstrates what I'm trying to do here. So I have my two different layers here, my background layer, and this would essentially be my foreground layer. I also have in Maya my middle ground layer, or where my character is going to be working from. I have a quick little animation on this. It's basically just a boat rocking, because I don't really want to have to animate this in 2D if I don't have to. I'm more worried about my character at this point. So if I can have an element that's already animated for me, and then animate on my character on top of that, it's going to help me out immensely. And I'm going to show you how that works. So basically, I have a little boat that I generically modeled. It's super simple, or find one from some of the free sites where you can get some props and stuff like that. And then what you want to do is let's see here, where is it? Display. Here, let me just expand this so that you can kind of see where I'm talking about here. Up here there's an icon. It looks like 2 dots and a slate. Those are your render settings. So if you go ahead and click on that, it'll bring up the window settings, render settings GUI, and go ahead and name it. This is the path where it's going to spit out the files, so you want to make sure that you notate that. This is going to be the name. This is going to be replaced by whatever you put, so it's going to be like a test, like in all capitals. If I hit enter, you're going to see it change up here. And the extension format that you're going to want is name_number.extension. Seems to be probably one of the safer ones to go with, so go ahead and click that. Frame padding. If you don't know what frame padding is, frame padding kind of helps you number your things. A safe number to go by is 3. If you are going to have something that is less than 100 frames, you can go with 2, but a safe one to go by with is 3. And what that does is it pads your numbers so that you can have all your images in a specific order. If you didn't have frame padding, software programs, operating systems like Windows or Mac will number these things in a kind of out of sequence order, and when you go to play it back, it'll look like there's some weird flashes happening in your shot. But anyways, a safe one to go with is 3. So keep going down, you figure out how long is your animation. Well, mine is from 1 to 48. I want to do it by frames of 1, because I want every frame to be rendered out. And then my renderable camera in this particular thing is my perspective view. This is my perspective view. I don't have a special camera, so I'll just say perspective view. And the thing that you want to notate here is that you want the alpha channel to be turned on. And my preset is 640 by 480, which matches my background. So everything here is set. I'll go ahead and close. And then you would go up to, let's see here, in the render module, you would go to render. This is 2010, so it could be a little bit different in some of the later versions, but it's still kind of the same. You might just find it in a different pane, but I think it's still called rendering in 2012, and I still think it's under something called render in 2012 as well. But you could ask somebody that knows a little bit better to where you could find it, just in case you can't find it. And then you want to go ahead and just do a batch render. You want to make sure that you have a light in your scene. The way you check that is you hit the number 7. Right now I have a light in my scene. If I didn't, this screen would be black. So let me show you that real quick here. I have an outliner. In my outliner, you can see that I have a directional light in here. If I hit delete, my item turns black. That means I have no light. So that's an easy way to check. 6 is texture, 5 is flat shade, and 7 is whatever lights you have in the scene. So obviously this is black, so I'm going to go ahead and say Control Z to undo that. That puts my directional light back in there, and we can see that I have a light. So this is pretty much the angle that I want it to be at. Set your angle, because that's obviously your camera. And then you go ahead and hit render, batch render, and it will render to this directory right here. Okay. So let's assume that that's done. I actually already have that rendered out, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. And now we need to deal with transparencies on this. The way to get the rain to become a foreground element and to see past it. Normally, if I was to just save this out and bring it into After Effects, you would see the streaks, but everything else would be white, or whatever your background color is. But we don't want that. We want this to continue to be transparent, and we do that with something called an alpha channel. So if you've never worked with alpha channels, I'm going to show you real quick how to use that. This one actually has one, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it so that we can show you how this is. One thing to keep in mind when you are working with this, if you want to save this out as a with an alpha channel, and you're not planning on using a Photoshop extension when you save it out, if you're planning on using something like a Targa or a TIFF or something like that, TIFFs don't really work that well. I think your best bet is to go with Targa. So let's assume that for now we're going to be working with Targas. The mode you want to be in is RGB color. Okay, so you need to make sure that don't be at grayscale, just be at RGB color. You could probably use CMYK, but RGB is a pretty good one to be at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold down the control button. I'm in Windows, by the way, so for me it's control, it's whatever the equivalent on a Mac is, and I'm going to left click this icon window right here, right next to the name. And what that does is it highlights everything that is not transparent, that does not have a transparency on it. So once that is selected, you'll see that these get all selected right here. If I go into my channels tab, these are all my channels for RGB, red, green, and blue. But there's no alpha here, so the way you create that is going down to this button over here. It's this box with this circle in it. And if I click on it, it's going to create an alpha channel for me right here. I know it's an alpha channel because if I turn on the eye on it, everything that is going to be transparent is this soft shade of red. So that's how you know that you have an alpha channel in there. So I'm going to turn that off, go back to my layers. Now I'm ready to save. I'm going to go ahead and say Control Shift and S. That brings up my Save As menu, and I already have one that I created. I don't want to be in TIFF because TIFF is a little funky sometimes. Targa seems to be pretty stable. So I already have one created, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. You name yours whatever you want. And what you're looking for is that alpha channels is selected. It does recognize you have an alpha channel, and it is selected. So we hit save. I have one already there. Do I want to replace it? Yes. And then the next thing that you want to concentrate on is, I think by default it goes to 24 bits. You want to make sure that it's a 32-bit. 32-bit is basically what's going to give you, allow it to handle the alpha channel. So make sure that this is set to 32 bits. And then say OK. So then what we're going to do is we're going to work our way into After Effects. If you've never used After Effects before, a blank After Effects, you're going to want to start a new composition. Here you go up here and you put in your name. This will just be test. You want to make sure that your aspect ratio is set to whatever your images are. So the 640 by 480 is fine. Square pixels is great. 24 frames per second is what we shot in Maya. And down here you set the duration. I think it was 48 frames. So 48 frames based on 24 frames per second is 2 seconds long. So I put down 2 seconds and I say OK. And that sets up my environment here. So if I double click in the, well, let's not double click, let's do it the proper way. If I right click in the project pane and I go to import file, then I navigate to where my images are, and I want the target that we created for the rain. I want the background image. I'm going to just go ahead and say open those. And it's going to bring up this thing. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to figure out how you want to handle the alpha channel. If you just say guess, most of the time it'll do it properly for you. And you say OK. So now I'm missing the middle ground element, which is the boat. And that I have in a different place. And I put in my boat test. And I have this sequence of TIFFs right here. Excuse me. So I click on the first one. And you want to make sure that TIFF sequence is selected. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring all of these in. It's going to figure out anything that's this name with a number extension, and it's going to bring it in. Okay. So I'll say open. And this also has a alpha channel associated with it. So I will have a guess. I'll say OK. And now I have frames 1 through 48 TIFF as an image sequence brought in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down my background layer, and I do that by grabbing it and dragging it into the timeline here. And it lays it in there nicely. The aspect ratio is perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll put my middle ground in, which is the boat, and I want that to be right above it. So you see the little black line that's popping in and out? You want that to be above the background because it's in front of it. So that puts my boat in there. The last thing that I want to do is bring in the rain. So the rain is going to go in front of everything else. So I look for the little black line and I drop it. And the rain has been put in. Okay? So we have our everything seems to be working just fine. It looks like I'm out of a few frames, so it looks like my boat is a little bit shorter than anticipated. That's not a big deal. You just figure out what that was. I created it at a different time, so I apologize about that. It's going to go to right there. Okay. So that should be fine. Go to the beginning. And doesn't like that. Okay, head over to there. Sorry about that. Just want to set this up properly. Okay, so anyways, we see that the boat is animating. So what we want to do next is we want to we're going to do two things. We're going to have the rain move, and we're going to have the boat be an element that you can use in with your 2D. So if I pick on the boat, let's do that one first, and I right click on the timeline, I get this menu. One of the menus that one of the things that I'm looking for here is going to be under Effect, and it's going to be, let's see, where is it? Oh, that's the hardest part, figuring out where all this stuff is. Stylize, I think. Yeah, stylize and find edges. And what it does is it, hang on, let me close this, we don't need this open. It essentially makes it look like it's like a sketch, like a pencil test. And don't worry about the fact that this is, looking kind of anti-aliased, or aliased, if you will. That's just because it's trying to update on the fly. But when you render it out, it'll look nice and smooth, just like this. But as you can see, each frame is essentially accounted for as like it's a pencil test. So that's a quick and dirty way of getting something that you could at least paint on top of if you needed to. Okay, so now the rain comes. So we do the rain, and what I want to do is I want to get to the top of the rain. So this is the bottom of my image, as you can see. I'm going to place it right here, and I'm going to go to I'm going to open this up, open the rain TGA up, and on there is something called transform. I'm going to open that up, and it gives me a bunch of different things that I can do to it. I could scale it, I could rotate it, I could change the opacity. Position is what we're going to be working with. So I'm at frame 1, go to frame 1, and I'm going to hit position. I'm going to hit